Many saints were not close to God from the beginning of their lives. Before discovering the mercy of God, they wandered. They became lost in the temptations placed before them: money, ambition, fame, and worldly glory. Only later did they realize that these things could never satisfy the human soul. Saint Augustine of Hippo, Moses the Black, Mary of Egypt, Margaret of Cortona, and many others all encountered the mercy of God after passing through the emptiness of worldly vanity. Today, we journey through the story of Saint Camillus de Lellis, the broken soldier who learned mercy beside hospital beds. Child of war and restlessness. Saint Camillus de Lellis was born in the year 1550 in the Kingdom of Naples, Italy. From the very beginning, his life seemed marked by struggle. His mother was already elderly when he was born, and his father, a soldier named Giovanni de Lellis, spent much of his life away at war. Camillus grew up surrounded by the stories of battle, weapons, marches, and military glory. But behind that image of strength was a wounded home. His father struggled with gambling. Money disappeared quickly. Peace rarely remained for long, and the young Camillus watched it all. As he grew older, he inherited not only his father's height and strength, but also many of his weaknesses. Camillus became tall and imposing, with a fiery temper and a restless spirit. He dreamed not of holiness, but of becoming a soldier. The world called to him with promises of excitement, glory, and honor. And like many young men, he believed those promises. The soldier who could not find peace. As a young man, Camillus followed the path he had admired since childhood. He joined the Venetian army and fought against the Ottoman Turks. His days were filled with marches, military camps, danger, and uncertainty. Yet while battles raged around him, another battle was quietly growing within his own heart. Camillus developed a dangerous addiction to gambling. What began as entertainment slowly became slavery. One loss followed another, first his money, then his possessions, until almost nothing remained. Again and again he promised to change. Again and again, he returned to the same destructive habits. The excitement of the gaming table became stronger than reason, and yet, even while surrounded by worldly pleasures, his soul remained empty. No victory satisfied him. No amount of money brought peace. The more he chased fulfillment, the more restless he became. God was already calling him, but Camillus had not yet learned to recognize his voice. The wound that would not heal. During his years as a soldier, Camillus developed a painful wound on his leg. At first, it seemed like an ordinary injury, but it refused to heal. The wound grew worse over time, causing constant pain and making it difficult for him to work. For the rest of his life, he would carry this suffering. Again and again, he entered hospitals seeking treatment. And there, Camillus witnessed something that deeply disturbed him. The sick were often neglected. The poor suffered alone. Many hospital workers treated patients harshly, without compassion or dignity. Some people feared the dying. Others ignored them completely. The hospitals were places of pain, but not always places of mercy. At the time, Camillus did not yet realize it, but God was allowing him to see the suffering that would one day define his mission. Sometimes, the wound that seems to destroy us becomes the very path through which God transforms us. Falling into poverty. Eventually, Camillus lost nearly everything. His gambling addiction left him poor and humiliated. Reduced to poverty, he wandered in search of work, without money and without direction. Finally, he found employment as a laborer, helping build a Capuchin monastery near Manfredonia. The proud soldier who once dreamed of glory found himself broken. There are moments in life when God allows human pride to collapse, not to destroy the soul, but to save it. For Camillus, that moment was approaching. While working for the Capuchins, Camillus encountered a friar whose words awakened his conscience. During a journey soon afterward, he experienced a profound conversion and surrendered his life to God. The words struck him with unusual force. Suddenly, he saw his life clearly. The wasted years, the selfishness, the addiction, the emptiness. And there, on the road, Camillus broke down in tears. He fell to his knees before God, not as a soldier, not as a gambler, not as a proud man, but as a sinner begging for mercy. That moment changed everything. The beginning of conversion. After his conversion, Camillus desired to leave behind his former life completely. He entered the Capuchins, hoping to become a religious brother. But the wound on his leg remained severe. Again and again, his condition forced him to leave. To Camillus, this felt humiliating. He longed to serve God fully, yet his own body seemed to prevent him. Still, God was leading him somewhere unexpected. Camillus eventually returned to the hospital of St. Giacomo in Rome. At first, he worked there simply as a servant and caretaker. But slowly, something began changing inside him. For the first time in his life, he looked closely at the suffering of others. He saw patients abandoned in dirty beds, men dying without comfort, the poor treated as burdens, and deep within his soul, a new fire awakened. Camillus began caring for the sick personally, washing wounds, bringing food, cleaning rooms, praying beside the dying. He did not serve them out of obligation. He served them because he began to see Christ in them. The man who once wasted his life at gambling tables now spent sleepless nights beside hospital beds. Mercy beside the dying. As the years passed, Camillus became known throughout the hospital not for power, wealth, or education, but for compassion. He treated the sick with a tenderness rarely seen in his time. He spoke gently to them, fed those too weak to eat, stayed beside those abandoned by everyone else. And most importantly, he believed that every suffering person deserved dignity. To Camillus, the sick were not burdens. They were Christ himself. Many nights, while others slept, Camillus walked silently through dark hospital corridors, carrying candles, medicine, and prayers. The smell of sickness filled the air. Cries of pain echoed through the rooms. Yet Camillus remained. He once said that the sick should be cared for with the same love a mother shows her only child. Those words were revolutionary, because in many places the sick were feared, the dying were avoided, and the poor were forgotten. But Camillus saw something different. Where others saw weakness, he saw the suffering face of Jesus. A new mission is born. Over time, other men began joining him. They witnessed his compassion, his endurance, his unusual joy while serving the suffering. Camillus trained them carefully. He taught them not only how to care for wounds, but how to care for souls. He insisted that his brothers treat every patient as if they were caring for Christ himself. He demanded cleanliness, attentiveness, and genuine compassion at a time when such standards were often rare. He wanted hospitals to become places of mercy, not merely places of survival. Eventually, this mission grew into a new religious community, the Order of the Ministers of the Sick. Today, many people know them as the Camillians. Their symbol was striking, a large red cross worn on their black robes. Long before modern medical organizations, these men entered dangerous places to care for the sick, the abandoned, and the dying. Sometimes they risked their own lives during plagues and epidemics. Many died serving others. But Camillus believed that love must be stronger than fear. Under his leadership, the order continued to grow. During his lifetime, Camillus personally established numerous houses of his community and several hospitals across Italy. Foundations arose in Rome, Naples, Milan, Genoa, and other cities, extending his mission of mercy to countless suffering people. The man who never forgot his past. Even after becoming respected, Camillus never forgot who he had once been. He remembered the gambling addiction, the wasted years, the pride, the selfishness, and perhaps that is why he showed such mercy to others, because he knew what it meant to be broken. True holiness did not make Camillus proud. It made him humble. He understood that every person, no matter how sinful, weak, or forgotten, could still be transformed by grace. The sick trusted him. The poor loved him. Even hardened sinners found comfort in his presence. Not because Camillus was perfect, but because he understood suffering personally. Fire in the time of plague. During outbreaks of disease, fear spread quickly through the cities. Many fled. Some abandoned even their own family members. But Camillus and his companions ran toward the suffering. They entered infected hospitals, carried dying patients in their arms, cleaned wounds others refused to touch. Again and again, Camillus risked his life, not for glory, not for recognition, but because he believed that no one should die alone. In those terrible years, people saw something extraordinary, a former gambler and broken soldier becoming a living image of mercy. The man who once wounded himself through sin now spent his life healing others. The final years. As he grew older, Camillus's body became weaker. The wound on his leg still caused pain. Illness slowly consumed his strength. Yet even in suffering, he continued serving others. He often visited the sick while barely able to walk himself. Those around him could see. His body was failing, but his soul burned brighter than ever. Before his death, Camillus encouraged his brothers never to abandon the suffering, especially the poor. He reminded them that charity without tenderness is incomplete. In the year 1614, after a lifetime of service, Camillus de Lellis died peacefully in Rome. He was 64 years old. But the mercy he carried into hospitals, into plague houses, into rooms of suffering, did not die with him. It continued spreading across generations. Legacy of a broken soldier. Today, Saint Camillus de Lellis is remembered as patron saint of the sick, hospitals, nurses, healthcare workers, and those suffering from illness. More than a century after his death, the Church formally recognized his holiness. He was beatified in 1742 and canonized in 1746 by Pope Benedict XIV. But perhaps his greatest legacy is not found in titles. It is found in this truth: God can transform even the most restless, wounded, and broken life into a source of mercy for others. Camillus once searched for fulfillment in gambling, war, and worldly ambition. But in the end, he found Christ among the suffering. And through that discovery, the broken soldier became a saint. Because sometimes, the people most capable of bringing mercy to others are those who once desperately needed mercy themselves. The order he founded, known today as the Camillians, continues serving the sick in hospitals, clinics, and missions across the world. More than 4 centuries later, the work that began beside the bed of a suffering patient continues wherever compassion meets human need. The legacy of Saint Camillus lives on, a reminder that mercy, when rooted in Christ, can transform not only one life, but generations. Final reflection. Some saints were born into peace. Others were transformed through suffering. Saint Camillus de Lellis was not remembered because he lived a perfect life from the beginning. He struggled. He wandered. He wasted years chasing things that could never heal the human soul. Yet God did not abandon him. Through failure, through sickness, through humiliation, God slowly led him toward mercy. And perhaps that is why his story still speaks so deeply today, because many people know what it feels like to be restless, to fail, to regret, to feel lost. Camillus reminds us that holiness is not reserved only for those who never fall. Sometimes, the saints who shine most brightly are those who once walked through darkness. The wounded soldier became a healer of the suffering. The man once consumed by himself learned to love the forgotten. And the gambler who once searched endlessly for fulfillment finally found peace beside the beds of the dying. His life whispers a truth the world often forgets. No life is beyond redemption. No wound is too deep for grace, and no sinner is too far from the mercy of God. Thank you for joining us on Echoes of the Saints. If the story of Saint Camillus de Lellis moved you, consider subscribing and journey with us through the lives of the saints, souls who remind us that even in weakness, God can bring forth holiness. Until next time, may the peace of Christ be with you always.